All right, so today I'm going to be talking about the short and long reflexes of the enteric nervous system. Um, so the enteric nervous system, or as I will refer to it, ENS, was first recognized more than a century ago when scientists noted that isolated sections of intestine removed from the body created a reflex wave of peristaltic contraction when pressure in the lumen increased. And what they observed was the ability of the ENS to carry out a reflex independent of control by the central nervous system, or as I will refer to it, the CNS. So the enteric nerve plexus is in the gut wall and acts as a little brain, which allows local reflexes to begin, be integrated, and end completely in the GI tract. It controls motility, secretion, and growth of the digestive tract. And studying ENS function is actually kind of difficult because they have no discrete command center. All right, so first I'm going to talk about the similarities with the central nervous system, or the CNS. So first are intrinsic neurons. The intrinsic neurons of the two nerve plexuses of the digestive tract are those neurons that lie completely within the wall of the gut, just as interneurons are completely contained within the CNS. Autonomic neurons that bring signals from the CNS to the digestive system are called extrinsic neurons. Then secondly, we have neurotransmitters and neuromodulators. So ENS neurons release more than 30 neurotransmitters and neuromodulators, most of which are identical to molecules found in the brain. So these neurotransmitters, they're sometimes called non-adrenergic, I cannot pronounce that, non-cholinergic, to distinguish them from the traditional autonomic neurotransmitters, which are norepinephrine and acetylcholine. Among the best known GI neurotransmitters and neuromodulators are serotonin, vasoactive intestinal peptide, and nitric oxide. Next, we have glial support cells. So the glial cells of neurons within the ENS are more similar to astroglia of the brain than to the Schwann cells of the peripheral nervous system. Then we have the diffusion barriers. So the capillaries that surround ganglia in the ENS are not very permeable, and they create a diffusion barrier that's similar to the blood-brain barrier of cerebral blood vessels. And then lastly, the integrating center. So reflexes that originate in the GI tract can be integrated and acted on without neural signals leaving the ENS. And so because of this, the neuron network of the ENS is its own integrating center, and that's similar to the brain and spinal cord. All right, so first we're going to talk about short reflexes. So short reflexes are reflexes that originate within the ENS, and they're integrated without outside input. Those are called short reflexes. So the submucosal plexus contains sensory neurons that receive signals from the lumen of the gut, and the ENS network integrates this sensory information, then initiates responses. The submucosal plexus controls secretion by GI epithelial cells. And then myenteric plexus neurons in the muscularis externa influence motility. And you can see in this diagram here, it shows in red the short reflexes and exactly what we just discussed. All right, so moving on to long reflexes. Although the ENS can work in isolation, it also sends sensory information to the CNS and receives input from the CNS through autonomic neurons. So a classic neural reflex, it begins with a stimulus that's transmitted along a sensory neuron to the CNS, and that stimulus is integrated and acted on. In the digestive system, some classic reflexes originate with sensory receptors in the GI tract, but others originate outside the digestive system. And you can, again, see that in this diagram here. No matter where they originate, digestive reflexes integrated in the CNS are called long reflexes. So long reflexes that originate outside the digestive system include feed-forward reflexes and emotional reflexes, and these are called cephalic reflexes. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, because they originate in the brain, and that's the origin of that word. So feed-forward reflexes begin with stimuli such as sight, smell, sound, or the thought of food, and they prepare the digestive system for food that the brain is anticipating. So like if you're hungry and you smell dinner cooking, then your mouth waters and your stomach growls. In long reflexes, the smooth muscle and glands of the GI tract are under autonomic control. In general, we say the parasympathetic division is excitatory and enhances GI function, which leads to the nickname rest and digest. And then lastly, what I'm going to talk about is emotional reflexes. So emotional reflexes and their influence on the GI tract illustrate another link between the brain and the digestive system. So there are, a range of responses, GI responses to emotions range from, we have traveler's constipation, butterflies in the stomach. You can also have psychologically induced vomiting and diarrhea. So it really illustrates that connection between the brain and the digestive system. And that is my presentation on the short and long reflexes of the enteric nervous system.